Boy, I got up early this morning myself, and when I looked, I thought, this ain't good. Not good. I don't think a lot of people are singing, oh, what a beautiful morning. Holy moly. I am feeling you if your property has been damaged and your life feels like it's at least temporarily ruined by this thunderburst or whatever you want to call it this morning. Holy cow. Welcome into My State of Mind. I am Dan York. We have a little bit of coverage of that. We have scheduled and want to keep to the schedule with Paul Doughty, the firefighter union president from the city of Providence, because he is embroiled along with his brethren in a very complicated, now legal and political fight with the mayor of Providence over this notion of 4 platoons and 3 platoons and what it all means, and 42 hours and 56 hours. Dan McGowan was my guest here last night and kind of laid it out for you journalistically. Now we're going to hear from one of the principals in the story. All righty? All right. Let's go to the rundown. And so I had a little 6:30 tea time this morning. You know, on Tuesday mornings, play with the fellas before work. You know, get a quick 9 holes in. I got to the golf course around 6:15 thinking, why did I even drive over here? Because the skies look like Auntie M. I've been watching Harry Potter with my daughter. I can tell you all the details. You got to listen to the radio show weekdays noon to 3 to listen to all the details of my life. I don't have time on the television, but it looked like Harry Potter weather this morning. It was just eerie and wasn't funny, huh? Headlines and storm galleries. WPRI.com, you can see a slew of pictures like this one, and then you can see reports like this one that you just want to cry.
Came around the other way, and I looked, and I couldn't believe it.
Steve Castro's wife called to say the grass had peeled up in Tuesday morning's storm. He never imagined he would see this.
We've been through hurricanes, and we've been here like 25 years, and it was a big tree, but never thought it'd be down like that.
Roger Ball has lived here in Warwick for 35 years. After this morning's storm, he says his home is unlivable.
Kind of blew out the walls upstairs, blew the closet out, blew the hallway out. It's plaster everywhere. We basically have nothing to live in right now.
Across the street, Richard Ferguson watched branches hit his house.
I happened to be looking out the window in the kitchen when a branch came down and brushed right up against that window, and it scared me.
In the same neighborhood, more trees down, more branches, and under all of this, 2 SUVs.
We're actually lucky. You know, we really are. It's damage to the cars and the house. It's meaningless.
All right, now listen, I have a lot of admiration for that guy and the bigger picture view. But Jess and Kevin and I agree in our pre-production for the show that we just want someone to yell, "This is unbelievable!" You know, too many people get too composed when we do the weather calamity news out there. It's just let it go, man. Let it go, let it go. Appreciate the lofty thinking. By the way, I was just trying to contribute to the news gathering this morning because I was stuck in that 95 South traffic, and I'm told that every time I take video like this, it goes upside down, and I don't know why. But that 95 South traffic was ridiculous because a tree was across the highway. Everybody was upset today. In New Hampshire, and this is no laughing matter, this is unbelievable, the heartbreak to see that a dad and his daughter lost. The headline is just outrageous, and the story is even worse.
New Hampshire fire marshals are inspecting what's left of the circus tent that came down yesterday in a fierce storm, killing a father and his daughter. Authorities say a severe thunderstorm warning was issued for the region just before the show began. The state fire marshal says local fire officials would have inspected the tent after it was set up if notified about the event.
To the best of our knowledge, there was no inspection done by any local or state official.
The incident in Lancaster comes at a time when dozens of state fairs and other festivals are taking place across the nation.
Yeah, it is the festival season, no doubt. I mean, I just say a prayer for that family. You know, logistics aside about who had the permit and who inspected what, I think that we are way too nonchalant about storms that don't have names. Unless we've named a hurricane or named a tornado or something like that, we just seem to think that, you know, these severe thunderstorm warnings are just something you can dodge. Well, guess what? I think we've seen the evidence here this morning, New Hampshire last night. You can't, and you shouldn't be playing with fire, or in this case, lightning. All right. Today's lucky guy, none other than the mayor of Cranston. Why would you say that, Dan? Headline. Because the state police report was issued late yesterday, and then the weather hit. And so the mayor was able to play the role on the radio and answer all the questions about, logistics of emergency management and DPW and lights out and power, only to know that the clock is ticking on having to respond to this incredible report. Here's the front page, the table of contents of the report, and let me zoom in on the top. All you have to do is take a look at this couple of lines. Executive summary: lack of leadership from the mayor and the police chief at the time. Political interference from the mayor. Personnel problems because of things the mayor and the chief and others were doing. This is a crime novel. This is 170, 180 pages. I'm only about a third of the way through, and it reads like a crime novel. And I see no possible way that this mayor can withstand the pressure that should come from it, even though he had a weather day today. Here's a reaction from Eyewitness News.
Rhode Island State Police's 180-page assessment of the Cranston Police Department found turmoil, low morale, and lack of leadership. It also found political influence and interference by Mayor Alan Fung and his administration. The first example, the handling of the ticket scandal and Captain Stephen Antonucci.
He wasn't really pursuing the issue.
It's almost like we're in a totalitarian state. It's just unheard of. And it's further disappointing that he wasn't disciplined for that.
Counselors who are still reading through the details of the report disappointed at the mayor's alleged influence within the police department.
And I think the mayor is going to have a difficulty getting the confidence of the public and the people who run the city.
Describing the report as disturbing, Council President John Landy now just wants answers from Mayor Fung.
Maybe he has an honest explanation, but I want to hear it from him.
Mayor Fung is going to try to say it's spilt milk and we all learn from our mistakes. But if you read the report, you will gag. You will find that some of the politics and the craziness and what he allowed the former police chief to do, it's outrageous. And nobody should survive this kind of incompetence and interference and a combination of such. And based on the everyday person's reaction, he may not.
This area of Cranston up in arms about a flurry of parking tickets in November of 2013. It all started when these two wards saw an unexplained uptick in parking tickets on one night, 66 and 62 respectively.
For that to happen and not think that something would come back to them, like obviously people are going to get upset about it.
I feel as though he should resign.
Leona Eastman doesn't think the mayor, once a gubernatorial candidate, can survive politically after this report.
I think Leona's kind of got it right. Honest to God, if you are a public servant, you read this and you say, I got to go. If you're a career politician, you read this and say, how can I work my way out of it? Alan Fung has a decision to make. And by the way, Alan, you are invited right here to talk about it. We've always had a friendly relationship. This isn't personal. You'd have to just read this report, folks, to realize that this guy has got to go. He's got to go. Two counselors that have been the original victims of this whole story, who were on with us last week, Mr. Stikos and Mr. Arquetto, will return for, I think we're going to tape them tomorrow, and you'll see them on Thursday on Dan York's State of Mind, right here on MyRI TV and on Fox Providence. And finally today, shortened rundown, because we got a lot of work to do with Mr. Doughty of the Firefighter Union. Here's a, I don't know, State of Mind reaction on Facebook, I guess we have. State of Mind is what you do when you feed back to us. Mr. Bradley, I guess, tweeting, you could have had Dan McGowan on for a full hour and not lost my attention. Yeah, Dan is a phenomenal reporter, and this story, obviously, this guy's a fire department guy, so, but when Dan does his work, he's got it right. And he laid out a lot of these issues that we're going to, kind of recap with Mr. Doughty, the Firefighter Union president. Did we say how you can get in touch with us? Did we do that? Did I skip by that? Did we miss that? You want to throw that up just in case? What the heck? It's semi-live TV. 228-1886. Leave us a voicemail. Tell us what you think. Maybe you want to scream into the telephone about how that thunderstorm ruined your summer. State of Mind at myritv.com. Tweet, Facebook post. Mr. Doughty, next. So amid storms and a storm in Cranston with the state police, you may have thought this was a semi-backseat first-page story, but it really isn't. I'll tell you, as this case goes, so will go a lot of financial decisions in the state of Rhode Island. The headline, Judge won't block Elorza fire platoon changes. Yeah, but you know what? I think that was expected. Here's the Eyewitness News report from the court.
Providence and its firefighters clashing in court. Over the weekend, a new platoon structure was implemented. Now firefighters are working an average of 56 hours a week, up from 42, with an 8% pay increase. The city says it has a management right to reorganize and make any changes necessary for that reorganization. The city has also argued the firefighters' contract is invalid and unenforceable. But the firefighters union says the contract is valid, and the firefighters say if they're forced to work 33% more hours, their paychecks should increase 33%.
That really right now there's a major disagreement we have with the city of Providence.
Well, actually, there is an offer. By the way, welcome, Paul. Again, nice to see you. That's your lawyer there. But there is a two-tiered offer from the city. We're going to go back to the beginning in a second, but to get to the middle of the sandwich, there's an offer that says we'll give you 10% attributable to your pension income, or other side of the menu, we'll give you 33%, but it's not attributable to your pension income, correct?
So it's a little bit deceptive, but yes, those are one ways to calculate.
What's deceptive about it?
The 33%. It's taken that, but it's not comparing it to if I had worked 56 hours under the previous system. In other words, he's taken the base, taken 33% of that and added it on, but that's not what it would be.
I don't know that you'd have a huge argument and grab public sentiment if you just lost overtime. I don't know that you would. Well, I think the public really understands that you guys are getting the hammer when it's 8 and 10 and 15 and even 20 or 25%, meaning if you're working 42 hours on an average basis now, and when you do work 56 hours, that 14 hours between is time and a half. But now you're only going to get full time, but that will be a steady work. I'm not sure that you get a lot of sympathy from the public if you got regular time for the full 56 hours. And that's what he's offered, right?
I think anytime you put negotiations in the public and you really set them up to be less taxes or the firefighters' benefits or anybody's benefits, I don't think it's an argument you're ever going to win in public.
Meaning your side?
Sure. I don't think
don't
it's
know.
something I can win.
Well, I'll tell you, you say that. It's very interesting you say that because I think Mayor Elorza may have, in unprecedented fashion, laid an egg, because on the radio, I get the pulse. It doesn't take much of a hair trigger for the phones to start ringing and whipping up on the firefighters for asking for too much. And nobody, with few exceptions, is going that way. Because I think there's an instinctive feeling of unfairness that's occurred here for the firefighter union with the offers and the process by which we've got to this point.
Right, so a couple thoughts. One, if he had come to us in a different manner and said, Paul, I just got here, we're up against it, I need some help with the overtime. It's really a budget driver. First, he would have to recognize that he controls the amount of overtime by how many firefighters are employed, the total amount of firefighters we have to offset the overtime.
Right.
So that would have needed to be part of the discussion. We would have had to talk about a time frame to implement a new school. But I can't say that it would have been off the table, because we've shown both with the concessions with Mayor Tavares and the pension reform that if you can make a case to us and show it to us in black and white, let us look at the numbers, let us challenge you on those numbers, that we might not sit down and have come up with some solution. But he never gave us a chance.
Well, there is precedent, because Mayor Tavares kind of approached you in the same fashion. And you did come to the table on some givebacks. And we're going to talk about what might be in jeopardy based on that former cooperation that you have provided. But let's go back to the beginning. This past June or so, he burped up, okay, I'm going to take the learning lesson from North Kingstown's move from 4 platoons to 3 platoons, and I'm going to implement it in Providence, and I'm going to do it in 30 days, and we're going to get it done. And you guys went, what? In fact, instead of negotiating with him directly, I know you met with him, I know there were some serendipitous tapings. We've covered that in the past, but you went to the General Assembly, and you tried to get legislation that mandated that any hourly over 42 would be time and a half.
Right.
Good stab, didn't get it done.
No, and you know, you've heard my thoughts on how we were treated by the speaker. I mean, he made a promise to us that we'd have a hearing. That's all we wanted. We wanted to be able to pitch our case, have a vote up or down, promised it to us repeatedly, and then at the 11th hour, pulled it away with no explanation. Still to this day, no explanation on why he pulled that.
I didn't realize the speaker made that promise to you.
He did. He absolutely did that. We could have a vote up or down.
In committee or in the full body?
Both.
Really?
If it passed committee, then it would go to the full body.
And you don't know why he decided against that?
Nope.
Well,
nor has he said
well,
publicly.
remember, the lieutenant governor and the mezzanine level of mayors really battled you on that and battled it back. And so
They did.
So you had some formidable opposition there. But although I didn't like the idea myself, I appreciated your tactic in saying, all right, Mayor, forget you,
Agreed.
I'm going to the General
Sure.
Assembly. So it failed, but it made the point. He realized he couldn't get this thing done because although there's a Supreme Court decision that may give him the management rights to make this change, he still has to negotiate it with you. You guys didn't finish at the table, so he said another 30 days to this past Sunday. And then we got the two-tiered offer after all these negotiations. He began with what, 5%?
Yes.
Okay. What am I missing about the chronology of events before we get to the big picture and what's at stake here in the next segment?
I think that's pretty fair representation of the chronology. And we've had a series of 7 or so meetings. They were all cordial, not much movement.
Was he involved with them
frankly.
personally?
He showed up at one. Made a lot of statements that then they walked away from, so it wasn't helpful at all.
Like what?
That, you know, anybody that wanted to work 42 hours, he would arrange a schedule so that they could still only work 42 hours. And then other people that wanted to work the extra hours and get paid for them would work those extra hours.
Really?
Yeah. But a lot of that stuff evaporated. It wasn't memorialized. It was just a real unproductive day that we spent with him. But he did spend a day with us.
All right, so what does all this mean? What happened in court yesterday, and where do we go from here when we come back? Stay with us. Paul Doughty, my guest, he heads the firefighter union in Providence, and I thank him for coming on. And by the way, Mayor Lorza, we got a seat here. It's so funny. These guys run for office and they need you. They get elected and they're under a desk somewhere.
Don't hold your breath would be my advice.
Well, you know, if he's got a defendable
that's a problem.
argument.
It's not defendable.
If you missed the play-by-play of what's going on with this firefighter union issue with City Hall, foxprovidence.com, so you can do the fact-checking. And there's a pretty good story in the paper about it today. And I would read Dan McGowan on WPRI.com and follow the trail of all this because he's been right on the money. In this back and forth issue before you guys actually were forced to move to the 3 platoons this past weekend on Sunday, you guys went to the judge and said, we want to go to arbitration, which was a natural thing. The city's reaction to your move to go to arbitration was to suggest that the contract that authorizes your move to arbitration is invalid.
Right.
Based on its length, because state statute prohibits any contract with a firefighter union to go past 3 years.
Right.
But it's intervals and approved by the city council.
And the solicitor's office and outside counsel at the time.
It seems to me that they know that they kind of made a mistake with that.
I'm not sure they realize it yet, but to me it shows the level of desperation that they're willing to go to be able to blow up the pension settlement. I mean, you're talking a $200 million change in the unfunded liability.
Remind everybody what you did. With Mayor Taveras, back on this theme of cooperation, you guys opened up your contract
and
in the middle of it.
Sure, and the pensions that had been set up before us in time. Right. So it got rid of the 6% COLAs, it stopped and capped those, and it put a freeze on all COLAs for 10 years.
And you did that not because you guys are benevolent, but because you saw the writing on the wall.
Because Taveras was able to make a case to us that it was unsustainable. He let us be involved.
Meaning you couldn't pay it.
Right, that it might bankrupt the city. But he let us read the documents that he had and come to our own conclusion, which was similar to his. Which is much different negotiating style than we're dealing now. But to change that really will immediately drive the city into bankruptcy. It changes the unfunded liability, which affects the ratings.
I don't think he understood. How did that get missed? To say, well, the contract's invalid, so they can't ask an arbitrator to get in the middle of this thing. The ripple effects, pension and everything else that's been reformed, are worth more money on an annualized basis. Forget even if we can go to bankruptcy in the city. It's a couple $100 million on the unfunded liability, but on an annual budgetary basis,
$25 million?
versus the alleged
Plus whatever
$5
they owe
million
us
he wants,
backwards.
the $5 million he wants to save.
That's right. And I think that's the point right there. There's an upside for the mayor if he's successful on this of saving $5 million. But on the downside, it's $12 million in unpaid overtime that we would argue he'd owe us if we're successful in arbitration, and $25 million in the ARC if it's true that the pension settlement is not valid. So you're looking at a total of $37 million on the downside, all to get $5 million.
The ARC is the calculation.
Sure,
on the
right.
pensions.
The annual required contribution. So it's a
Meaning
budget
what you
item
have to put in every year to pay
It's
for
the
the
money you put in the
pensions.
piggy bank for retirement.
Well, look, you know, you may not win with an arbitrator on the overtime because there are standards, federal standards, that argue that a regular week of firefighter is 56 hours or 53 hours.
But our argument is you can only look at the four corners of the contract. We're saying the contract's valid, and the type of arbitration that we want to go to is only the four corners of the document, so you can't look at anything else. And that's the major disagreement. He says there's no contract, therefore you can't go to arbitration.
Well, it seems to me that in the middle of a contract, if in fact the savings aren't going to be in order until 2017 anyway.
Which is a new addition to his comment. He
Right,
now
he
is
says
saying,
that.
well, maybe it might not
He
be until
knows he's
2017.
up against it because A, there's been 50 plus
That's right.
retirements, triple the average amount, which has thrown his calculations off, even to make the 3-platoon shift work well. Now he's got overtime costs no matter what built into this transitional thing that he's doing. So he's not going to save money for another year and a half, 2 years anyway. Why wouldn't you just add some benchmarks with a guy like you and a union that's been cooperative and say, look, we have a goal for the next contract. Be aware, we're going to this 3-platoon, and you have to help me get there. That would have been a more constructive way to do it.
Much more, and I think he'd be surprised at the result, but I don't think he, for whatever reason, wanted to go down that road. He wanted to be the guy that picked on the toughest guy in the block.
So in the meantime, you have 3 platoons running.
Yes.
He's giving you 8%.
Which we're grieving, by the way. We don't want the raise.
Because if you take the raise, it's almost like accepting the raise?
Well, it's fundamentally, I believe the contract's valid, so I'm not going to take anything less, and I don't want anything more.
Legal tactic or common sense move?
I think both. I don't want to have it both way. I don't like his hypocrisy, and so I'm not going to do it either. But I don't want the money. We won't accept it if it's given to us.
What do you do? Send checks back? What do you do?
Well, we're going to grieve it. I'll wait till the
You'll
arbitrator
grieve.
makes a decision. But
Yeah.
it's, you know, it's changing the terms of the collective bargaining agreement
Right.
in the positive in this example. But I don't want any changes, positive or negative.
30 seconds on where we're going. Where are we going here?
The judge indicated that he'd make a decision on whether the contract's arbitrable on Friday. He's already announced at the bench. It's an informal statement, but he said he found the contract valid. So we think we're 3/4 of the way there to having this come out in the way we want, and we want to still sit down with the mayor and see if there's things that we can talk about that are in common.
All right, in 15 seconds, what's his motive?
I'm not sure. I think he's got incredibly poor legal advice. I don't think he shopped for a second opinion, and I'm not sure he knew at the time the downside, the amount of money, the exposure that he's exposed the city to.
All right, we'll stay in touch. Appreciate the update.
My pleasure.
Paul Doughty, firefighter union. One more thing and we come back. Hey, so this firefighter union thing is important not just for the city of Providence, but what happens across the board from one community to the next with this new trend of moving from 4 platoons to 3 platoons. So we'll stay all over that on the radio tomorrow on WPRO from noon to 3 and beyond. On MyRITV in Fox Providence right here tomorrow night, Andrew Stewart, a local columnist who has a business analysis on the Paw Sox move to the city of Providence, which is going to come punch you in the nose any second now, taxpayers. You have a great night. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Again, we'll see you on the radio at noon tomorrow on WPRO.